Fundamentals. I'm excited to be kicking off Learning Week with you and excited to be talking about instructional design with you this morning, or I guess it is this afternoon. It is noon. So thanks everybody for coming. I am, just so you know, I am going to turn off my webcam and I'm going to focus in on the slides. I see a lot of you, when I look at the audience, are not on camera, and that is perfectly fine with me. I think we're going to focus in on some of the visuals here. I also want to let you know that I tend to run a very interactive session. I consider my sessions to be a conversation with the audience. My slides just guide us in that conversation, but I'm hoping that you will all participate in this conversation as well. So I'm going to stop the video here and get to my first slide. So my agenda for today is we're going to talk about what is instructional quality. We'll talk about systematic design and what that means. We'll talk about audience analysis, behavioral objectives, curriculum and course design, course development, implementation and evaluation, and then where to learn more. So, and actually, I think there is a way for you to raise your hand or chat maybe. Let's see. I'm looking at if you could let me know if you've ever taken an instructional design course. You can tell me in the chat, or Zizo, if there's a way for them to raise their hands, that would be great. We could get a count of how many people have taken an instructional design course.
All right, I see in the chat, Walt says he has not.
And if you have taken one, did it focus on classroom, e-learning, or something else?
Okay, Kristen has her hands raised, so that's one more person.
Okay.
Brigitta says she's not officially. Heidi she's done both. Julie Strauss says yes, e-learning. And that's it so far.
Okay, well, we have kind of a mix. Oh, I see a few more people chatting here.
Becky Bark says yes. Tanisha says I have not.
Okay, well, thank you, Zizo. I think what I'm hearing here is that we have a mix. We have people who have some formal instructional design training and some folks who don't have formal instructional design training, and that's fine. I think we can address all of that in our session today. So the first thing I want to do is I want to define what it means to be an instructional designer. This term gets thrown around in our industry quite a bit, and I actually am a big proponent of making sure that we all are on the same page and mean the same thing. So actually this definition is according to the ATD glossary. So an instructional designer is an individual who applies a systematic methodology based on instructional theory to create content for learning. Now notice on the screen I have circled 3 words: systematic, instructional theory, and learning. So the next slides we're going to be talking about what does that mean? What does it mean to be systematic? What does instructional theory mean? And what does learning mean? And how is it different from other forms of content? So we're going to start out with talking about learning theory. Learning theories are conceptual frameworks describing how learners absorb, process, and retain information. Learning theories are based on cognitive psychology. They are based on research. A lot of talk these days you're seeing things about brain science. Well, that's what it is. It's brain science. It is studying how people learn, how they perceive, how they remember, and making sure that your content is structured in a way that helps them with that. Excuse me for a second. Sorry, just needed to have a sip of water there. So anyway, that it is based, so when you're talking about somebody who's an instructional designer, it means that they have learned processes that are based on cognitive psychology. And because of that, because they can predict how people learn and remember, they can create products that help people learn and remember. All right, and then a systematic process. Well, there are a lot of these actually, but the one that you'll probably hear the most and see the most is ADDIE. ADDIE stands for Analyze, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. Now, a lot of people say ADDIE, you hear this, ADDIE is dead, and ADDIE's a waterfall method, and waterfall methods are no good, and all of that. Well, the reality is that even though there are some people who talk about ADDIE as a waterfall method, it really actually doesn't need to be a waterfall method. I actually believe that the evaluate part happens throughout all of the other phases, and which is why I show this diagram here. I show that when you do your analysis and you come out with your research results, you're doing some evaluation about, are the results that I got correct? Are they accurate? When you do your design, you're evaluating whether the design is the right design for the audience. When you do your development, you're constantly analyzing whether what you're developing is working for your audience, is going to work when you deliver it and implement it out into the world. And when you implement, you're often doing alpha and beta testing, which also is a process of evaluation where you're looking at whether that solution is the right solution for whatever the problem is that you're trying to solve. So I actually prefer this particular diagram to a lot of the diagrams out there that are more oriented to being waterfall, what they call waterfall. And waterfall means that everything is sequenced in a step-by-step. First you analyze, then you design, then you develop, then you implement, then you evaluate. And I actually think the evaluation happens throughout. It's not something that you wait to the end to do.
We have a quick question.
Yep.
Walt just wanted to ask if we would give them a copy of the slides.
Sure, absolutely. Okay. I actually have a series of handouts that I'm going to give you, and I can give you the slide, sure. All right, so I have a question for all of you. I'd like you to answer this in the chat area, especially those of you who have some instructional design training, but even those who don't might have some perceptions about it. Why do you think instructional design matters? And I'm going to pull open the chat area. So I'd like to hear from all of you. Why do you think it matters? Or doesn't it matter anymore? Make a learning. Go ahead.
Walt says, make learning effective and efficient.
That's right. Walt, good call. That is exactly what it does. I could tell you a story, and Jen, you're on that to avoid wasting the learner's time. Wasting our time too, Jen, by the way. Enables learning transfer, absolutely. So if you design it right, it helps the learners. It makes the learning easier for them, which also makes it more effective. It's important to engage adult learners. Yes, it is, Heidi. And you don't just want to throw stuff up on a slide without thought. Absolutely, Brigitte. When we talk about efficiency, one of the stories that I could tell, one of my recent stories is, I was recently asked to design a curriculum, and the curriculum they had anticipated that the curriculum would be between 20 and 30 modules. The current curriculum is 32 modules and 40 hours long. When we did the design work on it, it ends up, the new course is going to be 9 hours long and 9 modules instead of 32. So design can actually help you streamline your program, and you do avoid wasting your learners' time, but you also avoid wasting your time developing content that isn't really relevant for your target audience and is wasting your time as well as theirs developing stuff that isn't really that useful. So anything else on that? All right, I'm going to close the chat here for me. And so here's my answer on that question. I think instructional design matters because quality matters. And I think that instructional design is what creates quality. And we're going to talk about that term a little bit in a moment. What does quality mean? Another reason why ID matters is because it focuses on target audience needs. It's not focused on the content. It's focused on what does the audience need and making sure that you give it to them in a way that is measurable, reliable, repeatable, results in greater satisfaction, and ultimately results in better performance. So looking at that, you want the difference between instructional design and somebody who is just giving you content is that you're creating a reliable, repeatable, measurable experience that you can then measure creates greater satisfaction for the learner. And ultimately you want to measure whether it's creating better performance for the learner as well. So I'm repeating this because it's important. Now I want to talk about quality. So in this conversation about quality, what I want to do is I want to show you a variety of e-learning programs. And then after I show you these e-learning programs, I want you to tell me what you thought in these programs, what you thought was quality and what you thought may not be as much quality. So with that, I'm going to share a few things with you. I'm going to go into Firefox. Let me know, are you all seeing the Action Alliance Modern Healthcare Response to Sexual Assault?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes,
Thank you. Just want to make sure. All right. I'm also hoping that you're going to hear the audio when I play this. So this is a program that we created for emergency room workers based upon the Virginia Action Alliance guidelines for treating victims of sexual and domestic assault. And it was a set of rules, but we ended up creating more of a scenario-based approach. So I'm just going to play this for you.
Let's see what a model healthcare response might look like given a realistic scenario.
Lucy is a single, 23-year-old Caucasian woman living in the Metro Richmond area. Lucy's employed part-time at a local daycare, and she also takes classes full-time at a local university. Lucy lives in an apartment with a roommate. She has no children. One afternoon, Lucy and a group of friends go out to a local bar and restaurant for happy hour. After having a couple drinks, one of Lucy's friends offers to drop her off at her apartment on his way home. Lucy's friend asks to come in to use the bathroom, and Lucy says he may do so. When Lucy and her friend enter the apartment, her roommate is not home. Lucy's friend attempts to kiss her. Lucy says no, but her friend continues to kiss and touch her and proceeds to rape her. Lucy walks into the ER at 10 p.m. 1,000 thoughts and questions race through her mind as she approaches the desk. She explains to the person at the registration desk that she's been raped. She says it as quietly as possible.
How should the nurse at the desk respond to Lucy? Drag and drop the correct response to the nurse's speech bubble and then click the Submit button.
So I'm just going to move this. I assume you're all hearing this because you look like you're, yep, okay, great. This is the correct answer. I'm just going to put it in here and click Submit. And so it says correct, and it gives them feedback there. I'm going to stop with this one here, and I'm going to show you another e-learning project.
Hello, it's great to have you here for the Aon Project Management Core Course. If you've never taken an online course before, you're going to find that these are a lot of fun. If you have taken one of these courses before, then you know I'm just kidding about it being a lot of fun. Seriously, what you will learn about project management will benefit you throughout your career. And because we understand how busy you are, we've designed this course with your comfort and convenience in mind. You can take it when you want, where you want, wearing whatever you want, and you can go at your own pace. If you get hungry halfway through the first lesson, no problem. Grab a snack and come on back. You can pick up right where you left off. If you only want to work one module today and the others at a later date, you can do that too. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the modules. This course has 3 modules. In the first module, you'll learn the definition of a project and why project management is important. You'll also learn about the project initiating phase. Module 2 is all about the planning phase of a project. And Module 3 deals with the executing phase and how to monitor, control, and close a project.
Here's your first challenge. Let's say that you're a new hire and your boss wants to put you in charge of phone trades. He wants to know the approximate percentage of trades that are placed by phone. See if you can find the answer. Choose one of the team leaders to interview to help answer this question. You'll be asking the leader any of the questions available for that team. Once you find the answer, click I know the answer at the bottom of the screen. Choose any question to ask the Investor Services team leader.
You've asked what kind of calls we handle. Investor Services responds to inquiries from current or prospective investors and internal partners pertaining to all funds serviced by TA. Phone inquiries may range from questions about changing beneficiaries to requests to change contact information or provide account balances.
When you're ready, please select your answer for Challenge Question 1. You're right! Only about 10% of trades are placed by phone. Well done! You've answered all the challenge questions correctly. Now we're ready to wrap up this lesson.
Thank you, Lisa. Recalls seem to be an everyday occurrence these days. We find out about recalls through general public magazines, through television news announcements, direct notice from manufacturers and distributors, and the vendors that notify us. There are companies that you can contract with. The FDA has a website that lists some recalls that are FDA involved. Newspapers have columns for recent recalls, and ECRI is an organization that monitors recalls.
Okay, I'm going to show you one more here, and this one doesn't have audio, so I have to talk through it. This one here, and you're seeing, by the way, Pet Store Pro. Are you all seeing Pet Store Pro? Yeah? Okay, thank you for
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so this one is text-based, and actually I need to move this down because the Zoom thing is in the way. All right, so here, this one is reading. So I'm just going to show you a few of these screens. This is a section talking about different customer personalities. So you can see here, this is a profile of a director. This is a profile of dealing with a director personality, an analytical personality. And I don't expect you to read all of this, but just kind of get a sense of what's here. Dealing with this person gives you a bunch of bullets on that. Belonging personality, and then dealing with the belonging personality. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slides here, and I want to go back to my original question. So, what is quality? I'd like you all to weigh in. You saw a bunch of examples. What do you think was quality, and what do you think wasn't quality?
Would you like for participants to maybe?
Yeah, in the chat.
Or in the chat, okay.
Yeah, they can unmute themselves and talk if they're okay with that too, or we can chat.
Excellent.
You found the one with the 6 heads confusing. Yeah, okay. That was actually gamification. Not quality, the joke in the in the training. Okay. Listening to audio with nothing happening was boring. Okay. It seemed to all be quality training with different styles of learning. Okay. The multiple choice after the scenario. Okay. The healthcare one was rough. Yes, the topic was a little rough. I actually usually skip the first segment, but yeah, it's a really good example of scenario-based training. Because that is what they encounter in the real world. You like that one, yeah. Okay, so what I want to talk about here is there was one person that said that they were all quality training, and I would say that is generally the case. So I see traits of quality included stories, use of images, interaction, and user focused. Yes, I would say true. Some people will skip through the course without the audio because they can't be bothered reading. Okay, right? So here's what I would say about all of those. Every single one of those courses was quality. It was quality, and it wasn't because it was quality because it met the needs of that target audience and it met the needs of the business. So for example, the one that I thought was the roughest of the ones that I showed you was the one on the medical devices being recalled. And that one was actually a webinar that got run, and then we took this, we did editing to the audio, we did editing to the slides, and we synced it all up in Articulate Storyline. But I think that was one of the ones, if I was going to say any of them weren't quality, it would be that. But on the other hand, that project had a very low budget, and it was what we could do for that amount of budget. Not everything can afford the best solution imaginable. So that particular one was way better than what they would have gotten if they had just posted the webinar in and of itself. And it wasn't that expensive to do. It didn't take a lot of time to edit the audio and sync it with the slides. The one that you saw with all the heads, I admit it was a little confusing because I didn't show you the intro because the intro was a little long. But that one actually was the most expensive of all of the solutions. That was a gamification approach where you had to basically explore the interface and find the answer to the question, and then be able to answer the question when you found the answer. So it used a discovery learning approach. It was gamification, and that was actually more expensive to develop than some of the others. And for that particular audience, it was a very young audience, and they expected that kind of approach. So I guess what I'm saying, and then another one that I want to bring out is the pet store one. Now the pet store one looks really boring, you know, because it's just text and photos, right? So, but on the other hand, we've done multiple needs assessments with that group, and that particular group prefers to read than to listen. And that is actually the case with our physician audiences as well. We do a lot of medical training, and they typically prefer to read rather than listen. So that reading approach was appropriate for them. Plus, that particular audience has very low bandwidth, very old computer equipment, and the audio doesn't play well on their equipment. The video doesn't play at all on their equipment. And so that was the right solution for them. Their audience prefers to read, they have old equipment, they have slow internet connections, and so therefore that was the right solution for that audience. So what's quality isn't necessarily just about your instructional techniques, it's about using the right instructional techniques for your audience. And delivering your content in a streamlined way, as many of you said, delivering it in a way that is engaging, delivering it in a way that is relevant to their jobs. The first one that I showed, that was very relevant. Even though it was rough, it was very relevant for their jobs, for the emergency room workers who are on the front lines. So any other thoughts or questions about quality? Okay, I'm going to move on. All right, so my answer with regard to quality, as I said, quality is in the eye of the target audience. I think that is the main takeaway. But in addition, I think that quality involves these things. The first thing at the very, very top upper center is relevant. It needs to be relevant, and you need to know who that target audience is, what their job is, and what they need to learn. And then the next thing down is then you have interactive and engaging, which is also a mark of quality. Task simulation means that you're trying to simulate what they do on the job as closely as possible as you can in the instructional environment. So I realize that you may not be able to exactly do what is in their job, but creating questions that are like what they would get on the job is very important, and it does create quality instruction. In addition, there are things like being up to date, easy to use, that it works for the majority of people. This is a technology thing. If you have, for example, if you decided that video was awesome and you wanted to use video, and everybody in your target audience is in a third world country and has slow internet connections, and the video plays for them in a very jagged manner, that is not going to be quality instruction for them. So you have to know what the environment that your people are in and what will work for them. Also, E-learning is a visual medium, so you want to make sure that your e-learning is visually appealing, that the structure of it is sensible, that it makes sense, that it makes sense. Usually you want to structure according to how they do their job, and that the writing is clear and concise. So that's my answer for what does quality mean.
We have a
So,
few comments in the chat. I think
oh, great, okay.
Janet Hoffman says, I love the fact that quality definition includes audience and context definition.
Yes.
And Heidi, agreed with her. She says a definition of quality is what your client sees as a quality product.
Exactly, exactly. So, yep, absolutely. Thank you for reaffirming that. All right, so we're going to do a deeper dive into ADDIE now. We're going to segue into what does systematic mean? And we're going to do a deeper dive into ADDIE. So the first thing I want to talk about here is analysis. What is analysis? Well, analysis is looking at what is the gap? What does somebody need to learn? So you're basically doing a gap analysis. What do they know now? What do they need to do? What don't they know? What can't they do? And then looking to create a solution to fill that gap. So when I do analysis, I'm looking to answer 5 types of questions. The first question is, first set of questions is about the audience. You need to know, well, how many learners? Are there segments in those audience? Do they get grouped in a certain way? Do their needs vary by segment? Where are they? What languages do they speak? And those are just a sampling of questions. So, I mean, I'm just giving you kind of a very high level in this hour and a half. Instructional design is a field, as you know, that has entire master's degrees and doctorates. So how much can you do in an hour and a half? I'm giving you a very high level overview here. So these are some of the questions you ask about the audience. The technology, looking at what devices they're using, what's their internet connection speed, can they play what your solution is? Then the topics, what topics do they need? What topics do they want? Does it vary by segment? Again, these questions about the varying by segment informs your design, because if you have a set of learners where their needs vary by segment, you may want to develop something very modular where they take what they need when they need it. Next is communication. You want to look at what will they perceive as the benefits of your training, and what are the potential pitfalls. Now, I know, so I got a comment about the Ann Hewitt guy, project management guy, and his jokiness. But what he was doing was he was addressing the perceived benefits of the training and addressing some of the potential pitfalls of the e-learning solution. So you want to make sure that in your learning solution, you're incentivizing people, motivating them to take your training, to complete your training, and also addressing some of the things that they think are not as good or might be pitfalls for them. So, and then last but not least is their budgets. Looking at who's paying for the training, and then what is their budget. Now, I mentioned when I showed you the hospital solution that they had a very, very low budget. So it was the best solution that we could provide, and they actually really liked that solution. It was better than what they normally got. So for them, that was an improvement. So the first thing in an analysis is figuring out what are the questions you need to answer in these 5 categories, and then you answer them by doing things like polls and surveys and focus groups and interviews and looking at web analytics. So there's a lot of different ways to get these questions answered, and hopefully you could do things like SurveyMonkey, or there's a way you could put a poll on some sort of social media platform or SharePoint or something like that. Or you might be able to reach out to some people and conduct a focus group or a set of interviews to talk to target audience members. But one of the things I have learned over the years is that this doesn't have to be onerous. Like when I first learned about analysis in instructional design school, it sounded like a massive research project, and it doesn't have to be a massive research project. It can be as simple as posting a survey, doing a poll, inviting a bunch of people to talk to you, inviting people one at a time to talk to you, or looking at things like web analytics that are out there already. And I see that there's another comment in the chat Actually, oh, John, you like the joke. I like the joke too, but it's one of those things where you have to know your audience. And I guess that particular audience was okay with it. They told us when instructional design school to stay away from humor because humor is something that is hard to gauge across target audience. I would say if you have a very homogeneous target audience, you may be able to use that kind of humor. But if you have audiences that are very diverse, I would stay away from it. That would be my take on it. All right. So next we are going to, I want to talk about analysis, and I want to talk about this within the context of your job. So I want you to think about, and it doesn't necessarily have to be e-learning. I want you to think about a course development project that maybe you have right now, or maybe you did recently, or maybe you see upcoming. Think about that. And I want you to go into the chat, or you can talk to me if you prefer. I want you to describe the target audience, the problem you were trying to solve, and how did you know that the course that you developed was the right solution? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. Now, if I was in a classroom, I'd be watching you all. And here I feel a little blind. Hopefully you're all answering the questions and typing something here.
I don't see it. Okay, the responses started popping up now.
You're thinking, okay, good. I see Janet, audience is 16 to 22, young transitions. All right. Oh, here's a good long one. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. We did an e-learning module on accessibility and accommodations for guests with varying abilities. Our target audience is the front house team members who interact with guests regularly. The problem that we're trying to solve is eliminate improper guest interactions as much as possible by providing clear information to our team. We think this e-learning course has the right solution because it's easily accessible to our team members and we can track who has taken the course and then follow up in the field. Okay. Do you have any kind of evaluation method where you've been able to track, besides taking the courses, their reactions to it or whether it has changed behavior? Okay. Problem, life and social skills such as job hunting, first apartment, first bank account. Okay. So that's your problem statement, is that you have probably younger people. We're still in the reviewing stage, hasn't been launched yet. Okay. And Walt, as an upcoming project, target audience, newly hired workers, learn how to blend products. OJT may be on the job training, may be reduced with some e-learning to help provide the big picture and helping them contextualize. Okay. Here's a target audience, a call center, ages 19 to 50. They have a problem to solve, new hire onboarding. Is it the right course? We are given a handwritten processes and need to put into a storyline module. I have no formal instructional design training. I'm literally creating and waiting for feedback, fixing it as I go. Yeah, I understand. That happens. So I would advise to try to get as as good of an understanding of the audience and the problem as possible to make sure that you streamline your instruction and point at what those things are. Janet, less than 10 minutes, graphics, GIFs, memes, wording to create engagement. Okay, not sure. That might have gone with a one that was earlier. I have another new message here. Okay, your audience, sales and operations teams, the problem to teach them a company-wide virtual event service that is new and needs to be taught immediately to transition the business. The solution is an e-learning course, was informative and used infographics to explain the virtual event service. Okay. And Brigitte, follow up. I used to be in the call center, so I'm familiar with what it's like to be in their shoes. I see. Okay. Well, that does help sometimes. Okay. I don't know if I see any more coming in. I'm going to move on. Thank you all for your answers about that. And I don't know if you can see the chat when I pull it up, but I think I'm sharing my whole screen with you. All right. I want to move into design. So what does design mean? I think that I work in e-learning, as I've mentioned, and I think that there are three types of design in the e-learning world. The first one is a high-level design. The second one is a visual design. And the third aspect of design, there are three levels, so is a detailed design. So I'm going to go through all three of those. A high-level design is where it's kind of more, it's a very robust outline for a course or curriculum. It includes your target audience description, what are your prerequisites, in other words, what do they need to know before they take your course, why they need this course, the objectives for the course structure and the components, the course and module objectives, the content sources, so where are you getting your content, how are you teaching it, how are you evaluating whether you met the objectives, and then in an e-learning world, looking at some of the technical recommendations, meaning, you know, I have to look at whether they can view videos and things like that, whether they, the audio will work for them, whether they're in an environment where they can't play audio, things like that. So I'm going to show you some examples of some high-level design documents, and I'm going to start with this one. Okay, so what you see on the screen here, and I'm actually going to go all the way up to the top. This was a curriculum that we designed for healthcare security and safety officers who work in hospital organizations. This is the basic, you can see this is the table of contents for it. So you have the background, why we're developing this course, who's the audience, what are some of their motivational considerations, prerequisites, course objectives, the evaluation, the design overview, which is basically what types of activities we're using in this course, the technical considerations, the course structure and sequence, and then for each one of these modules, we have a design for the module. Now I'm going to kind of scroll through this document here for a second. And by the way, I cannot share these things with you, but I will share the slides with you. So this here, you know, you can see there were motivational considerations. These are the prerequisites. These are the course objectives here. You have the evaluation, which is so you must complete all the modules, and then there will be an end of course survey to solicit participant feedback. And by the way, these modules each had a test of their own, so they had to pass all the modules. This one is technical considerations. So this is what course authoring tool we're going to be using. This is Storyline. We had to use the template that we used in other courses. We have to publish to HTML5 with a Flash backup. I know actually these days we're having to get rid of the Flash. Actually, we might not in this case. These folks are working on really old computers and it's kind of a crazy situation, but in the technical considerations, we actually did have to have that Flash backup. So that's just an example of that. Now here is the course structure and sequence. So here are the 8 modules, the titles of the 8 modules. And then this is the design. I'm actually going to go down. This is the first module, which is kind of like an overview. But for every one of the modules, we have tables like this. And in the tables we have, here's the subtopic that we're talking about in the modules. We have, by the way, the topics. So this is topic 2. And then we have where are we getting the content for that topic, and then how we're teaching it. So in this case, we're showing them a sample job description. We're going to have a rollover interaction where they can roll over each part of the job description and learn about what should go on that description. And then we're going to be giving them a checklist. So in each of these things, so this one is, the next topic is why professionalism. We have where we're getting the content. So there's manuals and pages here, slides, and then how we're going to teach it. So this is hotspots to point out what's appropriate and what's not. We give them a quiz with scenarios and they have to give the appropriate situational response. So again, this is high level design. I'm going to show you another example of that. This one was one we did quite a while ago on a project management course. But in this case, you can see that the content sources are actually people. So in this case, we had multiple SMEs, and we had, the content source was we had to interview them or talk to them to get, so it was more of a allocated of responsibilities to each one of these people. And then the teaching method here was voiceover with text and screen captures. This was something that was a systems training, so we were using screen grabs to show what the system looked like. This was a Camtasia demo. So it's basically it's planning out your modules. You know, it's a very robust outline that shows what are all the things you're going to teach, where do you get the content, and how are you going to teach it. Okay, I'm going to go back to my slides, and I'm going to stop for a second. Any questions about high-level design? Questions or comments?
And you can take yourself off mute if you like to ask a question, or you can post your question in the chat.
Okay. It's like creating a storyboard. Actually, storyboarding is detailed design. This is high-level design. So we're going to get into storyboarding in a minute. And actually, storyboarding is one of those things to me that it could be development, it could be design, and I kind of put it at the end of the design process in this presentation. But I've seen it go both ways. I've seen it go into the development aspect, and I've seen it go into the design aspect. How often do you and your team find yourself skipping the formal process at this level? There's different projects. So we get two different types of projects. We get one type of process where what we're doing is content repurposing, where what we're getting recorded content or written content that we're supposed to repurpose. And yeah, I know a lot of people skip high-level design, but I'm telling you, high-level design is where the power is. If you want to take something, like right now, we're working on a process where we have a client that has 32 modules that take 40 hours. And we've gone through a high-level design process with them, and we're down to 9 modules in 9 hours. We're getting rid of all the duplication. We're streamlining the way that we teach it. This is where the power is, and this is where the value is of your work. Do I skip it? Yes, I have. For example, we have a lot of projects where we get speakers who record webinars, and our job is to take those webinars and do our best to repurpose them into e-learning courses. Do I do high-level design on those? Not so much. I might go through the process and make some notes to myself about what I'm going to do with each part of the recording. You know, we might do that. But when you do any kind of larger scale curriculum or, you know, larger scale courses, I would say that this step is what makes or breaks a program. Often what you do too is if you don't do this high level design, you find yourself lecturing, because when you do this kind of high level design, what you're looking at is making sure that you have varied your instructional methods, that you're not just lecturing, that you're keeping the learner's attention. And can you do that if you skip this? I guess.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, Janet has a question about what if you don't have time?
What if you don't have time? I would say there are ways to shorten this. We always do at least some form of outline. And that outline is always where we, like, for example, even if we're doing something that is a repurposing, and we're great. Actually, we have products that we finish them in a week. We've done projects where we've done 35 lessons in 36 weeks. And to do that, you need to plan. And you need at least some sort of planning. So I would say in those cases, what we're doing is we're looking at the content, we're creating an outline, we're figuring out what work we're going to do to repurpose it. There's always at least some. Now, is it always this robust? Not necessarily. In the case of a very brief design, I might do the course structure and the teaching methods and the evaluation methods, you know. And I might, some of these other things I might not do. That I always consider the target audience pretty critical too. But in those cases, I don't really have any leeway. I got a recording and I have to convert it into something. So I don't really have as much leeway to look at how I do that. So if that makes any sense. I agree, because we skip it, we often miss target audience needs and forget to include measurable objectives, and we have a lot of click next. Yep, that's exactly what happens. And see, here's from my perspective. Now, I worked for other people for 17 years before, and you get asked the question, what makes you different than somebody who's sitting there and writing slides? This is what makes you different. This work and getting the analysis, getting the data, getting the design right, streamlining your efforts, making it engaging. It often is what makes the difference. So I could get a little preachy on this one. And I would say we don't always do all of this. That's true. But I think at least some of it needs to be done for just about every training product. Meaning that you're looking at it, looking at the outline, looking at how you're teaching things, making sure that you're teaching them in the best way possible. So that was a good discussion. I'm going to move on to the next step, which is visual design. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, the next step is objectives. One of the things I want to talk about here, and for those of you that have had some instructional design training, this won't be new. And if you're not new to the industry, it won't be new. But one of the things that's really critical in instructional design is making sure that your objectives are measurable. Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to prove that your learning solution solved the problem, that it made a difference, that it did something that throwing content up on a web page didn't do, and that you can measure that. So here's what I'm looking at is as part of a high-level design, you are always looking at creating measurable objectives. Now I have a handout here that I'm going to give you, and I'm pulling it up. Let's see, here it is. All right, so this is a handout I'm going to send you later, but what I would like to do, sorry about that, just hit the wrong button. What I would like to do here is I would like for you all to write an objective in the chat area. Now, the criteria for the objective is that the objective must start with the learner will be able to. Then it must have an action verb, and I have some sample action verbs on the screen. And then, so I want you to really describe what a learner will be able to do as a result of your training. And it cannot be understand, it cannot be know. The first thing that, if you do go to instructional design school, at least in my experience, the first thing they teach you is that those two words are a no-no in objectives because they are vague and unmeasurable. So it's got to be a measurable action verb. And I'd like you to try to write one. So think about a program that you're doing right now and write a measurable learning objective with an action verb. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. And I'm going to give you, I'll just show you a few of these words down here. There's also on this handout that I'm going to give you, there's some links that you will be able to use to get some action verbs. Yeah, I always chuckle when our client provides the content and the objective says understand the phases. No. So rewrite that objective, please. By the end of this training, you will be able to list the 5 phases of the ATDI process. Okay, that's good. There is one. How about explain them? Taking it up a level. Learner will be able to implement proper guest service techniques for guests with varying abilities. I'm not sure what varying abilities means. Do the guest have varying abilities or does the learner have varying abilities? Guest with disabilities. Oh, I forgot about the abilities term. Yes, we can't call it a disability anymore. It has to be an ability. All right. Okay, I got it. So thank you for clarifying that. So they'll be able to use techniques to help people with disabilities and recognize those. Okay, we'll be able to correctly complete a wire transfer. That's a good one. That is very measurable. Do a wire transfer. If it's completed, it's that you measured it, it's done. That's good. Learner will be able to identify potential barriers to getting a flu vaccine. That is also good. So you'll be able to say why don't people get them? Be able to list that. We'll be able to create a meeting agenda with time allotments. Yep, okay, so that's very measurable as well. You can look at the agenda and determine whether it meets your criteria. The learner will be able to follow the blend sheet and properly blend ingredients without mistakes. Okay, that's good. You guys got it. You guys got it. I don't need to teach. I just had to make sure. Believe it or not, sometimes I teach this and I end up changing these objectives, but yours are all pretty good.
That's
so, okay,
awesome.
It's awesome. I love it. Okay, I'm going back to my PowerPoint slide. All right, making sure you're all seeing that. All right. So I'm going to give you this handout. And next we're going to talk about visual design. So the next element of design is visual design. And this visual design is also called a prototype. And what it does is it shows the elements and layouts for each screen type. So you might have screens that are voiceover with bullets. You might have screen types that are reading. You might have screen types that are rollovers. You might have screen types that are tabs. You might have, so a lot of different, you might have scenario screens. You might have question screens. You might have drag and drops. You might have multiple choice. So what you have to do is identify, you go through your design document, you identify all of the types of screens that are going to be in your program. And then you have to create a layout for each one of those. The layouts will have branding. They have styles, they have colors, they have fonts, they have symbols, they have icons. They have GUI, which is navigations, your buttons, how those buttons operate, the behaviors and the directions. Now, in many cases, you are already working with a template and the template already defines those things, and that is great. But if you're working without a template, one of the first things you need to do is to create a template or a prototype that has all of these different elements in it. And I see a chat here. So, oh yeah, Aziz, you were just saying you'll send an email. Yes, we'll send an email. Got it. Okay, perfect. So I actually do a whole session on prototyping, but that gives you kind of a basic overview of it. All right, the next step is what I call the detailed design. And this is when we mention storyboards, like I said, storyboards could actually go into the design phase or they could go into the development stage. In this presentation, I've put them as detailed design. They could also be the start of your development phase. But every screen in your storyboards needs to have a screen number, a screen title. If you have audio script, you would have the audio script and you would write that before it would get recorded. You would have visuals, what visuals are going to be on the screen or animations, and your programming or interaction instructions. So I'm going to show you a few storyboard examples. So I'm going to start with this one here, and I'm going to need to blow it up for you so you can see it. Okay. This is actually one where we did some repurposing. So we had a recording that we basically were taking and we were repurposing it. And what we did was we created a test taking tips learning path. And so what this slide is your learning path. And you have tip 1, tip 2, tip 3, tip 4, and then you have a question. And then you have tip 5, tip 6, and then you have a question. Now what you see down here, so you see this is your visuals. These are your instructions for how to interact with the screen. There's no audio on this particular page, and it's a hotspot interaction, meaning that you have to hide the next button until the learner has completed all hotspots. And each one of these tips jumps to another slide. So tip 1 jumps to slide 6, tip 2 jumps to slide 7. Now, and this is, by the way, this is one of our more basic forms of storyboarding. So here, this is slide 6. So if you clicked tip 1, this is what you would see. You would see, and I'm going to blow this up. This is a transcription of the audio here. And you can see this is what you would see. So this is basically storyboarding on a slide format. Now I'm going to show you another storyboard that is different than this. And let's see if I can, here it is, this one. All right, hopefully you all see something called Ihss Module B8 on the screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for confirming that. I'm going to blow this up a little bit so you can kind of see it. This is a Word storyboard. Now, we were using this because our subject matter experts had an easier time reviewing this format than the PowerPoint format. And, you know, there's just different reasons to use different storyboarding formats, but this one is in a column format. So you have your slide number, your slide title, what is your on-screen text, what is your voiceover, what photo or image or graphic is on the screen, and then your interaction or programming instructions here. This one is fade in text and sync with VO where marked. So these little arrows here indicate where the text is supposed to come in. So, you know, you're reading the script, most healthcare organizations require you to, and then write a report. That basically, that means write a report comes onto the screen. So each one of these little indicators indicates when the text is supposed to come in with the script. Now, I'm going to go down another one. This one is a tabs interaction. So a tabs interaction, there's 4 tabs. You can see information exchange, evidence, positive changes, improved policies and procedures. So when they click each one of these tabs, it goes to another column in the storyboard. And so I'm just showing you this. I realize that not everybody does this level of storyboarding, but I'm showing you this as an example of a robust program. By the way, this program had 13 subject matter experts and was for certification. So this one had to be perfect. It could not, we had to have these words exactly right. We had 13 reviewers making sure that they were exactly right. So again, very robust, very robust process. I'm going to go back to the slides here for a second. All right, any questions on storyboarding? And let me see if there's any. Oh, I do see one in the chat area. I find an advantage of using PowerPoint is reordering and inserting slides without the need to renumber. Yeah, I do not like using the numbered list. I see, but I totally get that. This one, it just worked for this project. We use slides probably more than we use the tables, but there's some cases where the tables worked. In this case, it worked for this audience, or for these SMEs actually. A lot of what the storyboarding is to make sure that the content is right before you program it, because it's a lot easier to change in Word or PowerPoint than it is to change once it's in an authoring program, or especially when it gets recorded. As many of you, if you're using professional voiceover talent, you know, you usually get a certain number of retakes and you don't get to re-record the whole program again. So making sure you get that script right is important. We've also had clients who prefer Word, so we'll definitely use it then. Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on. So I showed you some design methods and samples, so I've showed you samples of all of those things. I'm going to move into development. So I find one of the hardest things one of the things I find is that in the development phase, people often define instructional design as the development phase, and it really isn't. The development phase is simply where you get into the production process, where now you have an outline or a design document, you have a storyboard that maps out your content screen by screen. The development process is where you use a course authoring tool or a learning content management system to actually develop out the program. Now, some people prefer to develop right in those course authoring tools, and that's fine. I mean, if you do that, that is fine. But a course authoring tool does not make you an instructional designer, just like Word doesn't make you a writer. If you own Word, you're not a writer. If you own Captivate or Articulate, it doesn't make you an instructional designer. So the design part of it is all the things that came before the authoring tool. The development part of it are the things where you're using a tool to actually develop the course, to program it. So when you press this button, it goes to this, it displays this message. Or when you roll over this, it displays this message. That is what the course authoring tools are about. They're also about publishing the course in a way that your audience can view them or use them. If you're using a learning management system, publishing out to a SCORM file, publishing out or whatever standard you're using for that. But so really development is all about assembly, in my opinion. What you're doing is you're assembling audio, graphics, photo, text, quizzes, and interactions into a course. And so this is, like I said, this is the process of just making the sausage, I guess you'd say. But in the storyboard, what you're doing is you're defining what are all these building blocks that are going into the course authoring tool. Okay, so implementation. So what is implementation? Well, implementation could involve these things. It could involve, if you have a learning management system or whatever your delivery environment is, you want to make sure that the course you're developing works in that environment. If you're posting it on a website, making sure that it's working there. If you're posting it in LMS, is your bookmarking working? Is your completion tracking working? Making sure implementation is also communicating out with your target audience about the availability of the program. What are the benefits of that program to them? Why they should take it? What are the parameters about when they should take it? When they need to complete it? What are their deadlines? Also about how they register for it. Are you automatically registering everybody, or do they have to register themselves? And then, you know, delivering out, making sure that you're monitoring the delivery of that program and making sure that everybody is able to take those courses successfully. That's implementation in a nutshell. But implementation is all about the delivery of the program. So once it's done, where does it go? Does it go on a website, SharePoint, learning management system, wherever? How do you communicate about it? How do people register for it? And then managing the delivery of that program. Evaluation. I typically use Don Kirkpatrick's method of evaluation, or I like talking about it. I think this is one of the most basic ways to talk about evaluation. And what Kirkpatrick defined 4 levels of evaluation. There are other models that build off this that have 5 and 6, and there are other models of evaluation as well. But I think his is the simplest and best. So level 1 evaluation is measuring whether your learners are satisfied. So you're looking at them, you're giving them some sort of a survey and said, did this program meet your needs? Did it work for you? Was it good? Was it quality? And you usually do that via some sort of a survey. So having a survey at the end of the course to measure whether your learners were satisfied. The next level is level 2. And that is measuring whether they met the objectives. So at the beginning of the design phase, we set up the objectives for the program. Now the test should reflect those objectives, and you have a post-test at the end of your learning to determine whether they actually learned what they were supposed to learn. That is level 2. Did they learn it? The third level is really performance measurement. And it's okay, now they took the program, maybe they're satisfied, we've tested them, they learned what they were supposed to learn, but now did it make a difference? Are they actually doing what we taught them to do? So often this can be you can measure this in an observation way, going out and looking at the target audience members, determining if they're doing what you taught them to do. I noticed, so the person who had the hotel example, you would actually go out and observe whether they were doing the things that you taught them to do if you went out to look at guest services. Another way that you could measure performance is basically doing a survey 3 or 6 months later, asking them, are you actually, here's the things we taught you to do in this course, are you actually doing them? And then the last level of evaluation is return on investments. And this is looking at what were the benefits to the organization and the learners. What are the benefits they are receiving from doing this training? Now, I admit this is one of the hardest ones to get to. I have actually only done it a few times in my life. I do it now a lot because I do external training and I'm looking at e-learning programs that we charge for, and I can actually look at what did we pay to build the program and how much revenue did we get from them. The one time when I've been able to do this in an internal environment, I actually set up a tracking mechanism in my program, and it was for travel agents, and I could track how much they sold after they took the program. So that's another way, is looking, if you're doing sales training, looking at after they did the training, did their sales go up? So, all right, any questions or comments on implementation and evaluation? I'm gonna go back up to the, why am I not seeing my Zoom thing? There it is. Zoom is being slow for me. Zizo, if you see any, let me know, because that little pop-up with the chat isn't coming up for me. Oh,
All right, I have, Zaline has a question. Is that a Zappy feature?
XAPI. It can be. XAPI is an animal in and of itself. XAPI is really one of the e-learning industry standards. And what it is it's a method of SCORM. Well, let me go back a step. When you look at SCORM, SCORM is a method for courses and a learning management system to communicate with each other. And most of that is around completion tracking, testing. When you get into XAPI, you can start to integrate with other forms of databases. So if you wanted to track whether your audience sold more, if you integrated in with their sales management system, if you integrated your learning management system with your sales management system, you could then determine whether, if they took a course, whether there was a correlation with their sales going up. So, but it's XAPI is more of a function of integration of systems and being able to use that data in a useful way, if that makes sense. Got it, okay. You're welcome. Any other questions or concerns about implementation? Do all of you, do you use learning management systems? Do you use a website? Do you use SharePoint? What do you use to deliver your, e-learning? Or even your instructor-led, go ahead.
I'll come off mute if you can hear me.
Yeah.
This is Jennifer Chen. We do use an LMS, and as you were going through that and just naming all of those things that have to be taken into consideration, it made me appreciate our project managers a lot, because they take care of all of that. Once I get done with development, it goes through a content integration process, and they take care. And I mean, I knew sometimes it would get kicked back and say, hey, you know, the next button on this one isn't working, on this page isn't working. So I'd have to fix it, you know, if they find something during their testing process. But boy, you were just naming so many things that they're looking for, and I didn't realize there was that much in it.
There is a lot to that, making sure that it works for everybody. And there's so many computers out, operating systems, screen sizes, you know, whether you're viewing it on a mobile phone or a tablet or a PC, or, you know, there's so many different things that can affect the experience, the user experience. So yeah, there's a lot. Thank you for acknowledging that. And a lot of that goes into your visual design as well. These days when we design our visuals, we have to design everything to be viewed on 3 different formats, on the mobile, on the phone, the tablet, and like a PC or laptop.
Yes, and we have a few more responses. Brigida says she uses Workday. Julie, Cornerstone LMS, SharePoint sites. Sam says we use an LMS system for most of our e-learnings. Suzanne has a question. When budgeting your time, percentage-wise, how long do you plan to spend in each phase?
That is like a one of those triangle documents with the tip, and the top phase is the analysis, and actually maybe it's not, but the analysis phase usually 10 to 15%. The design phase maybe 25%. The development phase is the bulk of it. So I'd say that is maybe like 40. I'm not adding in my head, but you know, the design phase is the bulk of it. The implementation and evaluation phases are also pretty small. Like, you know, maybe the implementation phase is 20% and the evaluation is maybe 5 or 10. But that the design phase, in my opinion, the analysis and the design phases are like the tip of the spear. You know, they're what gets you the results. I see. So my company is insistent that all learning be delivered through the LMS so we can pull reports, but I think that eliminates an opportunity to make training easily accessible when needed. It might, it depends your LMS. Some are more accessible than others. So that makes sense. Although I think the measurement is really important. I think the measurement is what differentiates us from a lot of other different professions that develop content. What makes an instructional designer is the design part of it, the analysis, the design, and the measurement. That's what's different about us than your typical web developer who develops web pages or, you know, writes content and slaps them up on the screen. So, and I would agree that the development is the bulk of it. We do 3 quality reviews, including 2 functional reviews before deployment. It's rare for us that errors are found during implementation. Yeah, okay. And thank you, Kristen, good points. All right, I'm moving on. So going back to Addie, I want to just show you this handout here for a second. This is one of the handouts I'm going to be giving you. It is a 1-pager that, hold on a second, 1-pager that this is basically all the steps of the Addie process done in kind of 1 page, just giving you kind of a general idea. So this is one of the things I'm going to be providing you. It's kind of a recap of what we just talked about today. So you will get that. All right, so now the next thing I want to talk about is what skills are necessary to develop a high quality e-learning product. Well, they are, you need subject matter expertise, as you know. There's instructional design, there's graphic design, there's media production, there's authoring and programming. And that, by the way, that is not all of them. And then the question is, how do I learn them? So I'm going to show you another handout that I'm going to give you. And this one is from a session that I do called Exploring Your Skills and Passions. But you can see here, this is a slide from another set that basically shows these are the 5 main, there's 5 main essential skill sets to developing e-learning programs. The blue ones are the things that the instructional designer usually does. The white is the SME. The yellow are things that somebody who has a graphic design background or does well with a graphic design background. The purple are things that somebody with a media production background does well. And the green things are somebody that does authoring and programming or development does well. So, and I see that there is a comment in the chat.
Yeah, a few. I was just going to go over them.
Okay. Are you aware of manufacturers who have successfully decreased? Yeah, actually. Well, Wald, I could give you my example from the 90s. I used to work with Motorola, and they were a manufacturer. And what we did back then was in the 90s, we created virtual reality-based training. We created models of the machines on the manufacturing floor, and we trained the people on the line on those models, on those virtual reality models, so that we avoided bringing down the line, both for training and for somebody who made a mistake. So we reduced the amount of training that we did, reduce the error rate, and we reduced the on-the-job training. So we used those models so that we did very little training. Once they got in front of those machines, they were already pretty familiar with them because they had worked on them in the models. Can I tell you more afterwards? Yeah, sure. So that was quite a while ago, but virtual reality is becoming more of a thing again. I want to also talk to you about some e-learning professional skills. Now, again, these are the 5 skills, and these are the responsibilities that that the various skills are usually responsible for when you use a team approach to e-learning development, which not everybody does. But these are the different education and certifications that people have in order to achieve those skills. So a subject matter expert has experience, a degree, and certification in the topic being taught. Somebody who's an instructional designer has an instructional design or e-learning certificates. They might have a master's or a PhD in instructional design technology, also called educational technology, or I think educational design or curriculum design. There's a lot of different terms for it, but there are certificate and degree programs in that. Graphic designers usually have some sort of an associate's or bachelor's degree or certificate in art or graphic design. I've seen painting, a bunch of different things, but they know how to do visual design. They're good at drawing. They're good with colors. They're good with fonts often. Media production are people who have experience or degrees and certificates in film production, radio, and TV. By the way, I also have voiceover talents who have these kinds of capability, and you add to that, they know how to edit audio, but they also have really good voices and know how to speak well and get the most out of their voice. And then the author programming, you know, they have a knack for computers. They might have coursework in web programming, authoring tools, SCORM or XAPI. They may know those things as well. So, and a big caveat at the top, these skills may overlap. I'm doing it in nice little lines here, but what I find is that a lot of people have more than one. And so here, by the way, I'm giving you some, I want to talk about combinations next. So your e-learning professionals, an instructional designer may also use an authoring tool. A graphic designer may also do web programming. A media specialist might have a great voice. But here's my thing. I talk about nobody does everything well. And it really takes a team to do all of this well. I'm giving you on this handout, I've given you some links about where to learn instructional design. If you'd like to learn more about it, you will get that handout afterwards. So going back to my slides. Oh, I guess we're at the Q&A part. Hey, right on time, Zizo. I think I was targeting to be at 12:15 or at 1:15 for this. So, so what
awesome.
questions?
Thank you so much. Very insightful.
Yeah. I know, Suzanne, I really, I would like employers to learn more about this, to be honest with you. I think they expect you to be an expert in all of these areas. And I don't think it's a realistic expectation, to be honest with you. I think it sets people up to not to be successful. And also, your product is only as good as your skills in all of these areas. So I'll tell you, quite frankly, my weakness is graphic design. I am not an artist. Maybe you liked my slides, but I am not an artist. I'm a writer, and I'm a stellar writer, but I am not an artist. So if I ever had to sit down and do everything, you could probably tell by looking at my e-learning programs that I was not an artist. Now, there may be other people who say, well, I'm not very good with audio or video, or, and you can tell. Actually, I've done some sessions where I show a wide variety of e-learning programs, and you can tell which skills that one person team was not strong in. But to develop the best e-learning possible, it does take all of these skills. And I learn as much as you can. If you're a one-person team, I don't want to discourage you, but learn as much as you can about all of these other areas. So, what other questions or concerns? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, knowing your limitations and, trying to overcome them is also an important thing.
It is, absolutely. All right, thank you, Janet.
Yeah, Jennifer, I think a lot of times also organizations may not know the difference between design and development, and that it gets blurred, which is, I think you're right that we have to educate more about the differences between them and why they're both important.
Thank you. You're preaching to the choir. I'm with you there. I think we do have to educate. And I think a lot of organizations think that the whole thing is development. And there's so much more to it, and getting it right and making sure that what you're developing is good quality and makes a difference.
I have another question.
Sure.
I know you had some examples at the beginning of compliance training. And I think, organizations, I've worked for healthcare organizations and senior living organizations, and it's a challenge because it is compliance training. Everybody has to take it. Are there any suggestions that you have when you're going through this process and it's compliance training on how to make it, interesting, but also, as you said, you have to apply. Everybody in the organization, whether you're a frontline team member or whether you sit in the C-suite, has to take the same course.
My best recommendation here would be to make it as scenario oriented as possible. So you would create scenarios where you show people who are compliant and what the results of that compliance are, and people who are not compliant and what the results of non-compliance are. And usually we use like some sort of an approach where we give them a scenario, we ask them a question, we ask them to respond to what would you do? And then we teach in the feedback to those questions. Like, this was not a good answer because here's what could happen. So hope that helps. I see a comment about job postings asking for everything, but they are trying to fill a gap on their team. Yeah, I mean, this actually, I do a session called Exploring Your Skills and Passions, and that is actually the thing that I talk about. And I see those job descriptions all the time, and so many of them are so clueless, frankly, about what it is that we do and what the criteria, the skills, the credentials that we have. It's discouraging at times, but you know, I hope that by talking about this and having all of us talk about this, we can start to make a difference in this field, and show it is a profession. It is a profession that requires a lot of skill and background to do. So Kirsten, let's see, I'm one of those one-person teams. I do all the steps, including the VO. One of my weaknesses is the evaluation follow-up because I have to be on the next project. You gave me good ideas. Thank you. So thank you. You're welcome. I wrote, in my background, you heard that I wrote the original research paper on rapid e-learning. And one of the things that I write about is how to do some of this stuff very quickly. And, you know, you may not be able to do everything all the time, but, you know, but the more analysis you can do and the more evaluation you can do, the better off you will be in the long run.
I just see another quick question from Brigitte. She's asking, will Jennifer come back to do the Discovery of Our Skills and Passions webinar?
I can do that if you would like to invite me.
We would definitely want you to come and do it. So I will coordinate that with Rosa, and you know, it'll be one of our webinars we're going to program for, or we're going to schedule for next year. So Brigitte, yes, the answer is yes. We will, you know, send out the information once we can.
This was good. Where were you?
I had to put that deposit down for our thing.
All right. So any more questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
Is VR training hard
to wire it?
I see one.
Well, no, they just, she had
Zizo, can you mute that? Can you mute? Yeah, thank you.
I just went Wells Fargo and put the.
Well, actually, so I did VR training back in the 90s. And at that point, yes, it was very hard to create. We had to have people who did models of the manufacturing machines. And then we had to program all of the interactions with those machines, all those models. So, you know, pressing the buttons, we had to give somebody the ability to fly into the machine and see what was going on, if something was wrong, like if they were troubleshooting it. And yes, it actually involves some significant storyboards. Actually, if you thought my storyboards for this were big, those particular storyboards, each part of the machine had its own column. And we had to storyboard exactly what happened to the model when you pressed each button and did each interaction. So it was significant. Now, these days we have different tools to create VR. It could be that what you want to do is to use like a 360-degree camera and create some hotspots, and it is easier to create than it used to be. So there, you know, and there's also some of the authoring tools have VR components, like Lectora has the Centurio, and so it's getting better. Actually, it's getting easier and better, but it takes a lot of thought to do that well. So, and Janet, I will share my contact info on my last slide. Actually, I guess I could do that now. So there it is. What other? So this is our Q&A segment. What else would you like to talk about?
Yeah, and feel free to take yourself off the mic and if you have questions. Still have a few more minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to put myself back on camera. So are you all going to go out and take some instructional design training with a handout? I gave you some ideas.
Right.
If you don't have it. If you do have it, hopefully this inspired you to keep going on, to keep going down that good path.
Yeah, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So Jennifer, I want to thank you on behalf of all who attended and our team. I want to thank you so much for your time today. I want to open the chat for final questions, ideas, or comments before we wrap it up. I just see one just popped up. Gita says, I would love to get further training as I expand on this career. Thank you. All right, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Jen says, thank you. And again, like I said, we will send out the recording, together with the handouts. But any general questions or comments? Last call. All right, looks like we're...
Oh, do you know about organizations that need to create training but don't have the money to pay for it? I can volunteer. Oh, that's nice. Who is that? I couldn't see the name.
Carlene.
Carlene, okay. Thank you so much for looking forward to the handouts. You're welcome.
Yep. All right, as we begin to wrap it up, as you know, we're a volunteer-run professional development association, and we're always looking for people who want to lend a hand and join us to either learn new skills. If you have the time and want to volunteer, please visit our website. You can fill out the interest form, and we'll be more than happy to reach out to you. So once again, thank you so much. A big thank you to Jennifer for taking time to be with us today. Don't forget to save the dates. We have another session on December the 9th with Dr. Terry Horton, I believe, on what millennials and Gen Z want in the COVID era as the future of work continues to unfold. So that's going to be another great session we have on December the 9th. We also have an end of year holiday mingle and trainer showdown. It's going to be a facilitator showdown, on the 10th. So, save the dates, and we look forward to seeing you there. So once again, thank you everyone for attending. Jennifer, do you have anything else you wanted to share before we wrap it up?
No, I want to thank you all for attending as well. I appreciate it, and thanks for coming to hear me today. And if you have any other further questions, you can email me. Just appreciate your attendance.
Well, on that note, thank you once again. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.